I'm Heather Foster. I'm the sector lead for healthcare projects at Veolia, and I'm not Ben Thompson, as it says on the agenda. Unfortunately, Ben couldn't attend today, but myself and Cameron are going to do this presentation about Sheffield, our energy recovery facility there and district energy scheme. I actually visited the site a couple of weeks ago, so we're going to share some information about the energy recovery facility and our district energy connection. We've got a video.
Improving access to resources while preserving and replenishing those resources is what we do at Veolia. Each day we recover non-recyclable municipal waste as a source of economic and ecological energy. In a circular economy approach, incineration of waste can provide municipalities and industrials with electricity, heating and process steam. Here's how and why at a glance. Collected by dump trucks, the waste is delivered to the incineration plant, where it is weighed and then passed to the unloading dock. It is then tipped into a pit that is sufficiently big to provide continuous infeed for the plant. Remotely operated, the grabs have a dual function. They mix the waste to make it homogeneous, and they feed the combustion furnaces. In the control room, the technicians control the facility's operation and the quality of the atmospheric discharge. The waste is tipped into hoppers to supply the furnaces and then burnt at a very high temperature. The plant is maintained under negative pressure to prevent any odours or off-gas from escaping. The clinker, the solid residue from incineration, is removed by a conveyor belt and stored. It will be recycled as earth-moving material for sub-base roads. The acids in the off-gas are neutralised in a reactor by injecting lime and sodium bicarbonate, to which is added activated carbon to absorb the dioxins and heavy metals. Bag filters retain the dust, salts and other solids which will be sent to a hazardous waste landfill. The incineration of waste generates energy which will now be recovered. The heat is captured by the water tubes installed in the boiler walls. The heated water is converted into high-pressure steam in a tank. This steam, superheated in high-temperature exchangers, is sent to a cogeneration plant. Cogeneration both produces electricity and recovers residual heat. This steam drives a turbine which, coupled to an alternator, generates electricity. The electricity is fed into the public grid. The residual heat, generally lost, is recovered here in a heat exchanger to supply the local residents with heating or hot water. By transforming non-recyclable waste into a source of renewable energy, our circular economy solutions reduce the volume of cities' waste and their carbon emissions.
Okay, so the energy recovery facility you saw there, we've actually got 10 of those up and down the UK, and 3 of them are connected to district heating schemes, so one in Leeds, one in Sheffield and one in London that we call CEng. And just to give you an idea of the waste that we deal with and we manage at Sheffield, it's equivalent to 2,062 African elephants is the black bin waste that we collect. And the brown bin waste is equivalent to 123 blue whales, to give you an idea of the scale. And then Encyclopedia Britannica, I'm not sure, that might be a bit old for some of the audience, I think, but that's equivalent to 275,200 Encyclopedia Britannica, the blue bin paper waste that we collect in Sheffield. So what happens to the waste? So we've got obviously the recyclable waste, the paper and the card that goes to our materials recovery facilities, and we recycle that. Then we've got the glass, bottles, tins, again goes to a materials recovery facility, and then the non-recyclable waste, which is going to the ERF. So in Sheffield District Energy Network, we've got over 125 connections, with people asking us about more and more connections all the time. And we had a chat with somebody on the stand yesterday who was interested. So it's been established since the 1980s, one of the oldest district heating schemes in the UK, 45 kilometres of pipe and 125,000 tonnes of low carbon energy. This just gives you an idea of the network in terms of a map of Sheffield. Runs to, if anybody knows Ponds Forge, the leisure facility there, it runs to that site, to the town hall, around the student areas of Sheffield. There you go, you can see that. And our network availability, which is obviously very important for the people that get in the heat, has been over 99% for the last 3 years. So the benefits, there's no energy market volatility in terms of the heat. The price is agreed, which is obviously becoming more and more important at the moment. There's diversity and security of supply, so we do also have boiler plant for when there's shutdowns. Cameron's going to talk to you a little bit about those later. And we're working towards the zero carbon targets of the council, the health authorities and the education authorities in the area.
Morning everyone. Again, I am not Ben, but I'm Cameron Doster, so I'm a business development manager working in Heather's team. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the future and some of the things Veolia has done to maintain the availability of the RF sites. So the future for district heating, obviously net zero is the target for 2050, and district heating is a really important part of that. Regional carbon commitment. We've got low carbon neutral energy centre fuels, so basically biofuels. Network densification, so there's a lot of incentives from the government for people to connect to district heating through various grant schemes. And then things like the Bays heat zones, which is encouraging people to connect to district heating. So keeping the RF running. Veolia over the last, I say 8 years, I've been quite close to the sites on the shutdowns that they run every year. We've gone through a process of sort of internalisation, so some of the trades that work on the shutdowns have come in-house. So the mechanical trades and the fabrication of the actual boiler parts. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what we do on the district heating, some of the innovation in carbon lining and the network surveys. So mechanical services, traditionally, I think maybe 8 or 9 years ago, Veolia used to bring in subcontractors to carry out the shutdowns, but they've all moved to Veolia contracts. You know, sort of dragged them in, kicking and screaming, but we've internalised that service, so you keep all the IP in-house. It does get a bit confusing on a shutdown when everyone's wearing Veolia overalls, but it's generally it's worked quite well. And you know, they go from one outage to the next. The team of mechanical and industrial services, you know, do all the cleaning before the entry. So there's a list of some of the work they do on the RFs, if you're familiar. So the grates, the pressure parts, you know, the breakdowns, because you know you do have leaks. Obviously, it's about recovering the RF as quick as possible. And all the back end, you know, with the hazardous lime is on the bag filtration, changing the bag houses. Process water lines, platforms, fabrication, shell and tube boiler refurbishment repairs. And another specialist component in the RFs is the Inconel overlay parts. So there was a high expenditure on the Inconel overlay for the boiler wall tubes and everything. So we've got a fabrication facility down in South Wales in a place called Nantgarw, if you're ever interested or in that part of the world. So all the boiler tubes, all the walls, all the headers, they're all made in-house, so everything is internalised in the UK, and we've started to export now to Spain and France, to some of our other ERF facilities. Just got some images there, so these are the pictures of the team work, and you can see in the bottom left there the Inconel overlay machine. They've got 2 of these. I think they're looking to get another 2, and they work 24 hours a day, you know, all year round. And there's some work on some headers there, so it's quite specialist work. There's a lot of compliance, So again, the benefits of bringing that in-house is the control element, and the the reduction in expenditure by doing it in-house. So on the district heating, one of the innovations is the carbon lining process. So I believe this was done in Sheffield, and it was the first in the UK to implement this process. Essentially, I think it was established in the 80s, so you're going to get a lot of pipe work that, it's a little bit older. And if you don't want to go sort of digging that pipe work up, you can go through a process of carbon lining. So the end result is you end up with an internal carbon structure which is stronger than the pipe work that it's lining. And it cuts down time, and it's has less of an impact on the sort of district heating network. So that's one of the processes that they've been using in Sheffield with great success. And network surveys, so confined space access, drones. I think this is a Helios drone, and you can get zoned equipment as well. But it's been used. We've used it with great success for structural surveys, tank inspections, and now we're using it on the district heating network and the ERF. I think this is an image of the ERF, probably in the baghouse area, where you're not putting your guy at risk. You're taking the man away. It's repeatable. You haven't got to clean the area. You haven't got to you can do it in less time. So again, it's another innovation we've used at Veolia to make the job a little bit safer, and carry out all the compliant inspections that are required. And I think that's it. So I'm hoping you've got lots of really technical questions that I can ask Ben at a later date. So I guess thank you very much for your time. Is there any questions that we can try to answer?
How similar is Leeds? How similar is the Leeds installation?
Similar-ish.
You might have to ask somebody else in the crowd.
Yeah.
But
so we provide the energy recovery facility and the heat, but our colleagues at a different organisation distribute the heat around Leeds. They might be still right next to you.
It's a beautiful ERF though. If you're gonna visit an ERF, I'd suggest Leeds. It's the largest living wall in the northeast, I believe. But yeah.
And we've got the second largest living
Yeah,
wall.
yeah.
We've got a living wall.
A living wall, okay. Yeah. We'll work that one out.
Any more questions?
Well, we'll keep it going because I've got 20 years of pension in Veolia. Hope we keep it successful going forward.
Yeah.
Even against us sometimes.
So there's loads of interest in Sheffield from people, even residential. I think more and more people are hearing about district heating. Just the man and woman on the street are coming to us and saying, "Can you connect our home?" Which is not as easy as that, is it? Oh gosh.
Oh great, go on, bring it on.
Go on, Steve. So you mentioned you're saying it's low carbon, and if it's low carbon heat, how's that justified from burning waste?
It's a good question. Is that?
I just want to know whether
You knew where that was coming from him, didn't you?
how is it treated in terms of if I'm a customer,
Yeah.
I'd like some of your heat.
Yeah.
I might have to report elsewhere on my own car.
Yes.
Sort of rating.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because we were talking about this yesterday because we had a couple of colleagues from the commercial, and there's a lot of tenders in that part of the world that they're looking at, and it's about how we could, it's almost selling the service really and aligning it to your waste production and capturing the whole sort of carbon cycle. So yeah, I don't think I can provide the answer because it's not something, it's a large company, Veolia, and there's a lot of different things, and people quite often, they're not sure. It depends on what they've come into contact with, whether it's the waste, whether it's the energy. But it's something we need to work on as a business to align our services, especially the waste, ERF, district heating and energy. So yeah,
There's some talk yesterday around the proximity of it, so not taking your waste miles away to get rid of it, because there is that waste that's not recyclable. So if you're in Sheffield, take it to the ERF, so that reduces your transportation of the waste, so there's a carbon impact there. we're taking like metals out of it, so there is, during the process, we're trying to take as much, burn as little as possible, if that makes sense. And then there is the carbon factors that Ben would be able to explain to you, or Stephen. But you're welcome to come and visit, definitely, if you want to have a look.
I like looking at waste facilities.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just something I think.
Yeah.
A lot of customers presumably
Yes. The other thing we're looking at is carbon capture off the back of the ERF. So, and we're about to start a project in Sheffield to look at that. So, yeah, that would help considerably, wouldn't it?
A portion of the waste that you're feeding into a unit could be recycled.
I think that was back to the earlier slide. Did I do percentages?
Yeah, I think there might have been something.
Yeah, we've not got percentages.
No, we haven't. So I guess that comes down to the sort of person generating the waste, the consumer, because obviously segregation at source is the drive. But I think at Leeds, Sheffield hasn't got one connected, but they've got the MRF, which I think is mentioned in this section. So every council has its own scheme, depending on the number of bins, and it comes down to the individual then whether they are segregating properly. But the idea of a MRF, an MRF, material recycling facility, is to segregate the waste. So typically, I know Portsmouth has got one on the front end as well. I think Leeds has actually got a dirty MRF, so it can deal with a lot wider range of black bin waste. But a lot of that segregation is done up front, as best that can be, as best that can be done mechanically. But the hazardous waste that was mentioned in the video at the start, we own a salt mine called MIMechESector. So the hazardous waste that comes off, we store. It goes into two processes: Empire Works, which is in the Midlands, and MIMechESector, then the salt mine. It's stored there until the technology becomes available to actually further mine the materials to remove any heavy metals or anything. So, I think as much is done with the general waste as possible up front of the RF. Obviously, all the metals don't burn; they pass through and are recovered with the clinker at the base of the RF from the grate. So all the metals are recycled, but anything that it can be separated up front is done so. And when the technology becomes available to further treat the hazardous waste, the waste is there ready to be recovered in the salt mine of MIMechESector. Any more questions? Excellent. Good. We'll leave it there then. Thanks very much.